Hello and welcome to the 11th episode of the Forrin podcast. As usual, I am recording this in Odense in Denmark. My name is Mike Bowden, and there's someone else on the line.
My name is Patrick Garrett. I'm recording this in Montpellier in France.
Fantastic.
Can't believe I got every episode we get to another number, another +1, Mike. It just blows my mind.
It's like mass. It just keeps on. You just keep on adding.
I know,
it
just keeps going.
The mat just gets bigger. And we're recording again. So, hello everyone.
Woo.
Yeah.
Yo. Hopefully this time I'll be in focus.
I
Here's hoping.
You looked amazing last time, Pat. I think. Yeah.
Always. I've had a shave.
Yeah, you have.
And I've had a haircut.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you've updated your profile picture on your Facebook. Everybody follow Pat and spam him all the time. He needs it. He needs to work. We needs to work out, and he needs his life on the internet. That's like everybody else.
Follow me on Instagram. I am at Lord Pat.
Yeah, it's a sort of very kind of dumbed down sort of name. It's just inconspicuous there. Lord Pat. But yeah.
It doesn't say anything about me and my insane ego at all. But that's just something something I have to live with, Mike, and I suffer, I tell you.
Yeah. It's tough at the top, Pat.
It's hard being me.
But
who would be me? In fact, no one else could be me.
But if you come at the king, you better not miss. That's the so anyone out there who thinks they can take his place, you better watch it.
You literally can't.
If anyone's listening for the first time, hello. We had quite outstanding amount of feedback from the interview that went live this week with my colleague Nerma from.
Very good interview.
Nerma.
I thought, it was. Yeah, that's it. Don't get that name wrong.
Yeah, I can't get it right, but yeah. Nerma, thanks.
It's a bit of a tricky pronunciation if you're not used to Slavic languages, I would say.
She's lived quite the life, though.
Yeah. I would definitely, if you haven't listened to that, anyone who's listening, please do go and listen to it. It's a really amazing story, and I would like to thank her very much for speaking to Mike. It was a really, really amazing thing to listen to. Yeah,
and hopefully in the future, maybe next month, hopefully there'll be someone else we can talk to. There's a few irons in the fire as far as that's concerned. So, but we've got to keep people in suspense. I'm not going to reveal everything all at once. We've also had quite a few emails this week. Thank you for those.
Yep.
So many that we can't get through them all.
I think we're going to address one. I think.
Yeah.
I think we decided we're going to deal with one as a topic for this week. And which one is that, Mike?
It's from a listener called Kat. Whose name I believe is short for Katrine, Catherine, the sort of Danish version of the name Catherine. And anyway, should we just get on with it? Should we just go for it?
Let's go.
Kat writes, "Hi Forrin podcast." That's us, Pat. Having two languages, do you find that there are situations where you prefer one language over another? Does one language support one part of your personality better than the other? Do you feel confident expressing certain ideas in one language over another? And do you switch between languages when you think about different topics? I hope my question makes sense in writing. All the best, Kat. And she has kind of sent a follow-up. I think it was sort of meant as a sort of half joke. There's an Instagram account called Language Nerds, and anyway they've got these sort of a meme up, but I think the meme is quite interesting and relevant anyway. I think it's meant slightly tongue-in-cheek, but it says here, you're not a true bilingual until number one, your personality changes when you switch between languages. Number two, you find something 10 times funnier in your first language, and number three, you get sad to more songs. And that's maybe a starting point for any kind of conversation. But But Pat, I'll ask you the question first, because my answer, as usual, is long, convoluted, and I don't really know what it is. So, Having two languages, Pat, do you find there are situations where you prefer? There are about three questions in there, so we'll take one at a time. Do you find there are situations where you prefer one language over another, apart from obviously doing this podcast?
Yeah, definitely. Just to explain my situation for people who haven't been listening or who are listening for the first time, I was born in Britain. I moved to France. I've been in France for 14 years.
And you miss Britain terribly.
Oh yeah, I really miss that shit. And we speak English at home.
Yes.
I'm a student. I'm doing a master's course, and I do all of that in French. So there's a clear divide. So, like, to answer the question, do I find that there are situations where I prefer one language over the other? There's a really, really clean split for me, because basically everything that happens in the home is in English. And everything that happens in my, in inverted commas, professional life is in French. So there is a blurred bit to this question, because I consume a lot of media in English. Like, in fact, almost all of the media I consume, the visual media I consume, such as films and TV, is in English, and normally American, actually. Whereas almost everything I read on paper and academically is in French. That's starting to change a bit now, because I'm about to sort of like go into a doctorate, hopefully, and the amount of stuff I'm consuming in English is actually increasing quite a lot. So that sort of like bleeds into the second bit of that question. But before I go into that, I don't know. The thing is, like, the question is, do I prefer one language over another in certain situations? Do you prefer? Yeah, are there certain situations where you prefer one language over another? I'm not sure. I don't really know how to answer that, because I don't have a huge amount of choice over it. I mean, like I don't.
Maybe on reflection, though, if you look back, do you think, okay, I could have explained that better if I could have spoken English there, or do you think actually maybe there are some French idioms, some ways to say things in French that kind of actually kind of suit perfectly what you want to say, where that might not actually be the case in English? Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, just to give an example of how this does affect me, like the masters I'm doing. Where we've talked about this before on this podcast, like the situation in France in terms of English has changed quite a lot in the last generation. So, like, I assume most of you listening will know that, like, throughout, obviously, like, English is like a kind of default language in Europe, and it has been for like quite a while. But there was a lot of resistance to that in France for sort of like nationalist reasons. So now there's this huge push now that that sort of generation is a bit older, amongst the sort of younger generation, there's this massive push to learn English. So in my masters, like, for example, I would say probably about in the last year, maybe a good sort of like 40% of my lessons have actually been in English. And to be honest, I don't want to sound big-headed if any of my comrades, if any of the other students in my class are listening to this, but it actually makes the lessons really easy for me, because I don't have a language barrier, and actually it's kind of the inverse of my entire sort of like university career has been like listening to these like really like literary and intellectual lectures in French. So it kind of gets flipped on its head, and I can see that the other students in my class are kind of going through exactly what I went through when I had to sort of sit in these lectures, and somebody at like a master's level is delivering a lecture on, like, I don't know, gay rights or whatever in English, and they're just sort of like sitting there just going, oh my God, because there's just so much vocabulary that they're not used to at all. They may be able to sort of like converse like, well enough, and they've watched a bunch of like British TV, but that's not the same as being taught in a different language.
Yeah, definitely.
So like, do I prefer English in that situation? To be honest, actually, yeah, because it like makes everything like loads easier, but like also no, because it means that I'm kind of not learning anything. I'm not being challenged. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I can't relate to it, but I understand it, definitely. Yeah.
So what do you have situations where you prefer speaking in Danish, for example?
I prefer English 100% of the time. every waking moment of my life. It's the best language in the world, Pat. I mean, what a ridiculous question.
Of course.
No, there are lots of times when I prefer Danish. I think Danish, there are, I mean, it was basically the reason behind why I asked you is there are just some idioms in Danish that just sort of work. And obviously now I've said that, I can't think of any of them, but there are.
It's funny, it's funny. Like I'm exactly the same.
So, but there are, trust me, and probably in 3 episodes' time, I'll say, remember when I said that, and I have one ready. But there are just certain situations. I think it becomes now. I mean, if I could choose, I would just talk a mix of both.
Yeah, exactly.
Like even there is something here. There was a sort of a funny. Danes in Denmark, not Danes. In Denmark, they have a tradition at Christmas where there's something called like an advent calendar, but it's a TV program, and there's an episode every single day. Okay. For 24 days or whatever, and it's like a build-up story, and it's usually sort of fantasy, whatever. But there was one that they actually called it the Christmas. An advent calendar is called a julekalender, which is just a Christmas calendar, and there was one called the julekalender, and it was basically it was a sort of a bit of a comedy one, a bit more adult, and it was people kind of directly translating Danish to English, and sort of playing around with the languages. And a lot of people, when I kind of sometimes speak and I maybe mix it up, or I'll kind of translate an English idiom directly to Danish, which you obviously can't do, then, I'll get called the julekalender. But actually, that's a very long-winded way of saying that is actually how I'd like to do it, because I think there are some phrases and some words that, like right now, I'm actually thinking what I want to say in Danish and I'm translating it to English. I was going to say falder mig naturligt ind, which means there are some words and phrases that come to me more naturally. There you go. Than in English, because I use it all the time. I also speak Danish pretty much to my kids. It's only quite a new thing that I've started to speak more English to my kids. So if I could, I would actually speak both. But do I prefer one over the other? Well, again, find there situations. What situations would I be in? I think if I'm communicating with someone who is maybe Danish, but who I kind of know understands English, if I then want to say something like I'm serious or something where I'm being very direct or frank or even open with that person, then I'll probably change to English.
Okay.
Kind of almost in some weird way trying to add some sort of gravity, some gravitas to the situation. Now I am talking to you directly, because Danish sometimes can feel like a kind of a very comfortable, easily fitting, but mask that I kind of put on. Whereas, there are some situations where, if I'm being frank, honest or open or direct, then then it will be in English. Also, if I lose my temper, it will be English. And
like when for example, I can really relate to that. So like for example, when I'm riding around on my bike and I sort of get into a bit of a dangerous situation, if I swear at somebody or if I sort of shout at somebody, "Oh, you bloody idiot," or whatever, I'll do it in English. But to be honest, like the sort of mix between the two, it's interesting you say that, because I definitely find I'm doing a work placement at the moment, and I'm sort of being introduced to I'm working in an office, I'm working in a video production company, and I only speak in French there. Like no one speaks to me in English. I mean, they can speak a bit of English, but like not, the odd phrase. They're not bad, but they no one speaks in English. I've had a couple of people who actually, it's like a sort of how do you say it in English? It's like a sharing space sort of thing, like
it's not. It's not codependency. It sounds like
it's a place where there are a bunch of offices, where people can just sort of like hire spaces to work or whatever. And so we sort of have a lot of the time we'll have lunch together. There have been a couple of people. There's a lady that lived in Britain for I think like 13 years, and she can speak amazing English, and we speak a bit in English, but the rest of them speak French, obviously, and like we don't. So yeah, my entire life in the office is in French, and I find that since I've been there, obviously, which is one of the reasons I did it, I find that I'm becoming genuinely bilingual. I know that might sound a bit weird because I've been here for a really long time. I've been here for like 14 years, but and I know this is something that you probably went through a long time ago because your situation is basically Danish. And like because my home situation is all in English. Even though I've been in like university for like the last sort of 6.5 years or whatever.
That's mental. Jesus.
Yeah, I haven't it's very different like being in a lecture situation where you're just kind of like listening to somebody, or being in a work situation where you're constantly conversing with people and communicating and having meetings and blah de blah. So what you said about like mixing the languages is definitely true, and like I definitely find that when I'm kind of like walking around talking to myself, which I do a lot, like constantly like rehearsing things that I'm going to say. I still have to do like a lot of presentations and so forth for school. Most of it's in French now, actually, and like I definitely do. Even when I'm kind of like just thinking, just like formulating ideas, part of the cat's question is, do you feel more confident expressing certain ideas in one language over another? I'm finding that it's more and more the case that I'm more confident expressing myself in French. So like it's what you were saying about like there's certain situations where you're kind of being you, if you like. I don't really have that facility like where I can just suddenly switch to English because I'm not surrounded by people that speak English.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, I get that.
So I'm getting to the point where I really can just like flip between the two like with no problem. I can say literally anything in either language, and it's I kind of feel like I'm kind of myself in both languages. That's all like first part of the
question.
Like does one language support one part of your personality better than the other? That is going away. That has been the case, but that's definitely disappearing for me now, I think.
Yeah, I think in terms of humour, but I'm going to roll back actually. In terms of when I'm at work and I'm at work meetings, there's a difference. When I'm talking to my colleagues, I can just be me, and sometimes I can mix it up. But yeah, 90% of the time, I'm speaking Danish. There's no problem. I can laugh with them. I can joke. I can small talk with them. But it's strange when I'm at a meeting. I think I'm very direct in my language. And I say what I think, Pat, and I think what I say, No,
don't pull those punches.
No, that's it. I'm just, I wouldn't know how to if I was asked. But what's it called? So I'm really kind of conscious. I mean, yeah, I think I've also maybe it's just my personality. But again, this is about individuals, so I can't really talk for everybody else. But I think a lot. I can put people's noses out of joint. Especially, and this is what I've heard. I don't want to generalize out there, but I think I've mentioned it before. But this is what I've been told that Danes are very kind of I don't know what it's called. I don't even know if there's a word for it. Again, conflict scoot. Scoot means you're shy. Okay. So they don't really like sort of conflict. They don't like to, where I'm kind of there's the elephant in the room. And we're not really talking about it.
You're going to shoot it.
Yeah. Well, we're not talking about it. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll describe it, perfectly for you, and then ask you to like address it. And that doesn't. And I think if I could do that in English, I just think there'd just be more nuance to my language. I get a bit kind of how do I express this, and now. When I say these kind of things, I will kind of have this sort of intro of, look, don't take this the wrong way. I do mean this constructive. I do mean this in a constructive way, but this is how I'm going to say it. So I say it. Whereas I feel that if I could do that in English, then I could
Probably be a bit more polite.
yeah, a bit more maybe polite or just less confrontational. And
no, I experience exactly the same thing. Like, because basically I have fewer ways to say things than a native French person would. So like, you know, I just have to kind of say it. And you know, like I've got a meeting at work actually tomorrow, and I know there's going to be it's going to be a bit tense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like it's I have to. There are no. You're absolutely right. If I was saying it in English, like, you know, I would be able to phrase it with a lot less. I don't know, effect. I probably will have to like literally say like just as you said, I'm being constructive, and like, you know, I'm not trying to sort of like criticize you. I'd probably say this in English, but I'd be able to say it with a lot more speed and fluidity than I can in French.
Yeah.
You know, and like when you know, I've just noticed that I don't know if it's the same in Danish. Do you have a polite form and a sort of
for some words, there is a kind of a polite, like asking for things. There's a polite way of doing it. There's polite words.
Do you have 2 words for you?
Yes.
Okay. Right. So in French, it's like mega important. Like if you.
Oh, right. You don't do that to like you don't do that to the king. You say
no.
You'd say d. You'd say d and not do.
Okay. In French, it's vous and tu. So like, you know, if somebody that you're not. If there's a hierarchical situation in any way, there are 2. Honestly, this is a nightmare. I'm going to explain this briefly. This is a ridiculous topic, and like I hope we come back to.
You love hierarchy, so yeah, go for it.
Seriously, like basically, if somebody's in a position of, if you don't know somebody very well, you have to say vous.
Right.
If you say tu to that person, they will probably be literally offended with you. Like, so if I just like bumped into somebody on the streets, the same in like Italian, for example, you can't like, but it is the same in Italian, I think. I know because I've been there, and they kind of forgive you because you're not Italian or whatever. But like in French, after a while, like you kind of, it's a mistake that you just can't make because people get really pissed off. And if you don't say, for example, I could never say to a teacher. I just couldn't do that. Even though, like, you know, a lot of the teachers are younger than me, for example. There's a hierarchical situation which demands that I show them that respect and say vous. But like, it's not as black and white as that. Like, it's not just a question of respect. It, like, the vous and the tu basically denotes a level of intimacy. It's basically really hard to explain and judge if you're not French, because like if like all of the people I work with are tu. There are no vous there, but there are people that will say bonjour, which is the vous hello,
right,
and then they'll say tu. And but if you say salut to those person, which is hi, or, you know, roughly translated as hi, then that'll put their nose out of joint, even though they're saying tu to you. It's such a pain in the ass.
Right.
I don't know how I got onto this, like, but like seriously, it's just something that's driven me fucking insane for years. It's an absolute nightmare.
You got onto it because you've got a meeting tomorrow where maybe you're going to have to kind of be a bit more direct than you otherwise would be.
So
and
like,
that's
when you kind of like you have to literally ask someone. This is I'm not making this up. Like, I still can't actually believe that this is the case in 2024. When you sort of like know somebody, like you say, you have to actually say, I'm gonna tutoyer on se dit tu, or, you know, like, which means that I'm about to cross this threshold with you, this sort of like politeness threshold with you, where we are about to become slightly closer than vous, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And
you can do that tomorrow, eh?
Oh no! Like basically all of the people I work with, we say tu. Right. So like, but my boss, he had to say to me, like, you know, well, is it okay if we say tu to each other? Because we're not. Oh, fuck it! It's a fucking nightmare, honestly. Anyway, like, obviously I said.
I understand. He had to sort of ask to come into that kind of sphere. You have to kind of announce it.
Exactly that, and like I think what I'm trying to say is that if you're not native French, there are a million like politeness pitfalls that you can like fall into. So like if you're being like too direct with somebody, and you don't kind of, if they don't quite get that you're not doing it on purpose or blah de blah, then you're basically behaving in their eyes as somebody that's just being like really really aggressive,
Right.
basically. And I said all of that based on what you said about
Work.
something else. I can't really remember.
People at work. When I say something at work, I mean, the thing is, I get. I mean, I really do mean this ironically for people who maybe don't get my humour, but now I understand how a lot of women feel, because seriously, just hear me out. Because when I say something like that at work, that kind of, and I can sort of see put noses out of joint, right?
Yeah.
Someone will say, I think what Mike was trying to say was,
yeah, that's it.
Yeah. But the thing is, they'll just put it so eloquently, and they'll get it, and they really will hit the mark. And they'll actually say out loud, I could have probably said it like he did, or
Yeah.
And so there's that. I've got kind of like one way of saying it, where and other people will sort of understand my point, and hopefully maybe it doesn't matter if they agree with it or not, but I'll often be kind of. I'll often be sort of translated to sort of maybe a polite, less confrontational Danish, and and which is a good thing because I learn. But I haven't learned. So it's 24 years, I still haven't learned. But
that's it, yeah.
but it's that can actually annoy me. I mean, not that they do it, but again, feeling foreign and feeling, that is when I kind of feel, okay, I haven't said that. The way people have taken it. The way the reaction has been, in the crowd, that wasn't really what I wanted to sort of get out of people. I just wanted to say this, I don't agree with this, and this is why I don't agree with it. But in saying that, I've maybe I don't know, sort of challenged my boss's authority and insinuated that everyone in the room who does actually agree with it is an idiot. And, and that isn't really what I wanted to say. That wasn't the effect I was going for. Yeah. So I would much prefer if and so I think at work, I think it's a very sort of colonial thing to sort of think, but I know everyone understands English, so can't I just bloody say it in English? So I get kind of just a bit frustrated. You understand me, so you why do I have to say it in this silly? No, it's not a silly language, but I can feel frustrated. All I'm saying is just I'm just saying I can feel frustrated by it. And
I understand.
And also, when we were talking about being angry, I sometimes can feel that the languages collide in my head, so I actually can't speak. Like if I'm angry or really frustrated with someone and they're in front of me, and I actually try and get out what I'm trying to say, it just becomes this mishmash of two languages, and it's kind of like they just sort of get in the way of one another, and I get really, really high pitched. And
I tend to find that if
you have to sort of burst out,
If I'm being emotional in French, I tend to the sentences just kind of like start to fall apart a bit. Like if I sort of like get excited in English or get emotionally excited, I can talk like really quickly and fluidly. When I try to do it in French, it just becomes a bit of a mess, and I have to kind of like really try to sort of like calm myself down, basically, so that I have to think about what I'm saying, basically, because I kind of like lose that like immediacy that I have in English.
I think that's a good point, the immediacy. Yeah.
But like I said, it is changing. I mean, I create a lot. I do a lot of writing. I do things like I make videos and so forth, and. I do like increasingly that is becoming French. Like I wrote a book in French last year. I'm writing another one now.
Yeah, you and your bloody book. I wrote a book in French, everyone.
I write another one for my for the second year of my masters at the moment.
Never gonna read it. Yeah.
It's I'm actually like I want to talk about this because like it does fit in with this. Because of the time constraint, it's basically like a 50,000 word book, and I have to do like a 50-page piece of research that goes alongside it. And so that obviously that's a lot of words, and I'm not writing it in French. I'm speaking it in English. So like I'm speaking it into a dictaphone, then plugging the dictaphone into my computer,
Right.
playing it into Google Docs, and then it transcribes it into English, and then I take the English and then translate it into French in Google Translate, and then tidy all the French up.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It's
but it's going to change.
Actually,
it's going to change it radically, is it not?
It does. It's a really, really interesting process, and I'm gonna talk about like the in the research that I do, because like a lot of the stuff I'm writing about in inverted commas is about like language and about the sort of duality of language. One of the reasons we started this podcast in the first place was the whole question of identity. It really changes the output, it does have a massive effect on the actual production, in the fact that I'm literally just talking, and I'm talking in English. If I were the reason I talk in English is not because I can't say it in French, it's because my French accent is actually, I've got a really strong English accent in French, and Google Docs, the text, the speech to text tool in Google Docs can't understand my accent. So I have to say it in English.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's just a massive mess of the two languages, which is pretty much like describes my life in general, really. Yeah.
But moving, go on. No, I was just saying, moving on with the question. I think, what does one language support one part of your personality better than the other? Thinking about it, and if you think about it for a while, I definitely think humour. I definitely find that. You might have noticed, you might say something and I can maybe come a quick kind of comeback, and I'm still, I can't get there that quick in Danish. And sometimes I'm in social situations and people are saying things and I've got this great thing to say and I'll try and say it and it'll either come out wrong in Danish, or I'll be thinking about how to say it in Danish and the moment's gone. And, so definitely that kind of just sort of a stupid, maybe silly remark, or a sort of a play on words type joke, or, a pathetic double entendre or something like that. I'm kind of getting there in Danish, but it's much, much, much easier to sort of... and I feel that definitely humour is like a massive part of our identity. So I think that
I was going to say it's one of the main things that like adds to the sort of like the whole feeling of foreignness and the feeling of exclusion, is the fact that you can't express yourself immediately in the same way that other people can. I mean, like the people in the office, I mean, they make a lot of jokes with each other, and like it's getting easier, but yeah, it's like, there's a lot of cultural references that I just don't understand. You know what I mean? It's just like they talk about a lot of the like sort of 1960s film stars and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the same in there. It's the same here, and they all grow up listening, watching some stuff on TV or some music that they listen to, and a lot of Danes have gone to sort of the schools, gone through the school system in a similar way, and there's all these references, and I do understand them because I've lived here for so long, but. I haven't lived it,
don't quite get it.
Yeah, I don't quite get it, but I can follow it, and I
mean, like this semester, just to follow on from that, I mentioned the lecture that we were given on gay rights. The guy that gave it to us was I don't know what to call it. Like it's like a group of people who dress up as nuns,
right?
And they're called the Sisters of something. And they basically, the idea is that they dress up. It's kind of it's a form of drag. Like the seminar was about drag, about the history of drag, and it was centered on sort of RuPaul's Drag Race. So like the whole thing was about drag and gay rights and in general. And the guy that did it, he was French, but like he did the seminar was in English. And so his English was fucking unbelievable, quite frankly. Like his name was Charles Joseph, and like if he ever hears this, I was absolutely staggered by his level of English. Like it was pretty amazing, to be honest. Like we had to do 2 pieces of work for him, and one was to imagine yourself as a drag queen, and like, imagine your drag personality and like sort of describe it and so forth. And it was completely libre, as they say in French, free. So you could just basically write whatever you like. And the second was to analyze two pieces of video where gender was expressed atypically. So have you ever heard of Bottom, which was like the Rick Mayall and Aid Edmondson sitcom? Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah, that I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. See, you've heard of it, right? Like that was on in the fucking 90s, right?
Yeah.
So like,
That's amazing. Yeah. Groundbreaking.
He and no one else in that room, nobody in that room would have ever heard of that show, ever. No, absolutely not. They would never heard of Rick Mayall, or the young ones, or Filthy Rich and Catflap, or any of that. Do you know what I mean? And you have heard of it all. Do you know
of course I have. Yeah.
And the only reason that you've heard of it is because you grew up in Britain.
Yes.
And like, and I wrote those like because his English was so good. Like, we were effectively allowed to like write our papers in English. And to be honest, it was so comforting. You know what I mean? Like there are bits like in Bottom, they constantly dress up as women, and there's this constant sort of like playing on the the situation of women in society and so forth. They were a pretty radical pair, and
they were.
And it was so comforting to write about that and to write about the 90s in Britain and these cultural references. Like there's I don't know if you'll remember the episode. There's the Christmas episode where they find a baby, and they basically the three kings, which are Eddie, Spudgun, and Dave Hedgehog. They have the baby. They give him gold, Frankenstein, and Gur, and like the gold is a box of Terry's All Gold
Chocolates. Box of chocolates.
Yeah, exactly. Who the fuck is going to know that if you're not British? Like, you have just got no chance. And then basically that's the situation that I'm facing every day. That basically everyone knows what the French equivalent of Terry's All Gold is, and
you don't.
Yeah, that's it. I really don't.
I think
it was a really pleasant experience to write in English after so long. It was very. I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the idea that the word libre, just kind of fits it. Yeah, libre, because liberalism, Statue of Liberty, freedom, and all that kind of stuff. It's all good. I think do I feel more confident expressing certain ideas? I think we've done that. We covered that, haven't we? And it says, do you switch between languages when you think about different topics? I think that for me, that's really situational. So that means if I'm thinking about like work and teaching and what I'm going to say, then I'll think in Danish and think in Danish terms and almost kind of not rehearse what I'm going to say, but I think I'll approach it from this angle. But the whole narrative in my mind will be in Danish. If I'm maybe meeting a Danish person, then all my thoughts about maybe how that is going to go, what I'm going to say, where the conversation's going to go, that would also be in Danish. When I'm thinking about doing this podcast, I'll think about planning it and what we're going to say and how it's going to go in English. If I'm thinking about talking to other English people in my life, like my family, just thinking about that, then I'll think in English. Even though when I talk to them, I'll lose words because the Danish words will come. But also, like you, I ingest almost everything I ingest is in English.
Yeah, that's
I don't.
pretty crazy.
I don't, and I used to actually watch quite a lot of Danish TV and Danish, films or whatever. I don't think I've ever read a Danish book. Sorry, everyone, but I haven't. And so I think again, just very sort of situational. It's just very situational who I'm talking to. Basically, if what I'm doing is in Danish, I'll think about it in Danish. If what I'm doing entails that I'll need English. But I can sometimes, I don't know. Sometimes there's some reactions that will be in Danish, but I think it's a quite a good one. I was just going to move on to that sort of meme that she sent, where when it says you get sad to more songs. I know that's kind of maybe like a bit of a joke, but I do actually get sad, Pat, to both to music and to see you're laughing at me. You're trying to emasculate me on the podcast. But no.
I'm always sad, Mike. Yeah, but, do you know what I mean? It's just like fucking bored sad.
But I mean that things will move me. If I'm watching a television or film that's good, that is moving, then I will become moved by it, or also listening to music. But it's actually quite a good. But actually, even though that might be quite funny, I thought it was quite sort of interesting, because I was trying to think: is there anything that I've seen that's Danish or heard music-wise that's in Danish that has had that effect? Because it's usually like the narrative. Obviously there will be some things where tragic things happen and it will be just like situational, but it's usually something someone says that resonates. There'll be lyrics to a song that kind of resonate. And but I don't think I probably consume enough Danish sort of media. But there is one song called Blomsten og Vasen by a group called The Flower and the Vase, by a group called Folkeklubben, which is the sort of the club for the people, or the club of the people, or the people's club, if you want to put it wherever you want to put the emphasis. But anyway, that song is quite moving and quite sort of beautiful, sort of lyrics wise. But I do actually think there's more. I think I get more affected for some reason. For me, again, this whole idea of poignancy, which is where I sort of started with. I think English, for me personally, is a lot more poignant.
I think it's probably just I think the simple truth is that like I probably just have like a better level of like comprehension, certainly in terms of like oral English. Like my comprehension of the French language is like really good, like, but it's not like in terms of, but obviously it's not native, so like it's I mean probably a better example for me is like French literature. I've read a lot of books in French, and
you're just going to shame me this whole episode, aren't you?
No, it's not that. It's just that, like, it's basically what I'm saying is that, like, when I listen to a lot more English than I do French.
Right.
And I speak a lot more English probably than I do French as well, you see.
Yeah.
And so, like, when I hear, like, a French song, for example, I probably don't have the same level of comprehension as in terms of lyrics and stuff. I mean, I can be moved by it in a way, but not in the same way that I would be if I were listening to like English music. I'm almost all of the music I listen to is either electronic or in English. Like, I listen to almost no French music. But like, it's the inverse in terms of reading. Like, almost all of my reading is in French, and I've read a lot of like pretty heavy French books, and like I've read things like Kafka in French and stuff like that, and I've read
that's nuts.
What did I read? I read
It's pretty hardcore that in English.
There's a guy called Celine, who was a French dude. He ended up being a Nazi, a literal Nazi in the end. But like the first book he wrote was, I know we love that guy. The first book he wrote was called Voyage au bout de la nuit, which is Journey to the End of the Night. And that is literally one of the best books I've ever read, and that blew my fucking mind. Like, if anyone listening like wants to want something to read that book, it is absolutely fucking amazing.
His pre-Nazi days were great.
Honestly, like, basically he started off, but it's effectively an anarchist book. And then, like,
we're not going there this episode. We're not going anywhere near it.
Which he wrote in the 20s, which is like he was in like the First World War and afterwards like went to America, and it's an anti-capitalist book basically, and that moved me pretty much to tears. Do you know what I mean? It's pretty amazing, and like that was what I think that was. Certainly one of the first times where language kind of like stopped mattering quite so much in terms of like, where I was emotionally, if you see what I mean. But like in terms of like, like music, I mean, I've got to be honest, man. Like, I don't listen to like French music. I mean, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I don't like, I love those French guys. Love you, France. But like, my God.
Yeah, same here. Like,
I
mean, there are some good Danish bands. There are some, but very few.
I don't believe you.
Very few. And But just to sort of sum it up, I was thinking about it. I think sometimes, yes, it can be the music that kind of strikes a note or strikes a chord within you, whatever. And maybe it's not the language. Maybe the thing that is moving is because you can relate to how that person is saying what they're saying. Like the actual, the way they're expressing it kind of resonates. Whereas not having that kind of growing up speaking like Danish or French, the way maybe a French person, or the reason why they would be moved by something, is the words themselves might be quite banal, but the way they're being said, the emphasis, the kind of the situation, and that is just something again that I think that might be the major difference, and also that Danish music isn't very good. But anyway, and Kat,
French music's really weird. Like honestly, it's just like sort of like really weird shit pop. Like, sorry, French people, do you know what I mean? Like,
well, I think
I'm
most
sure my
music,
daughter would disagree with me, but like,
I think most music is very weird shit pop.
Yeah, but
I think
probably true.
Even Taylor Swift. But anyway, yeah.
I'm gonna say, like, I think this is a good point to end on before I dig myself a really big hole.
But Kat, I hope that answers your question. I think it was a really good question, and it definitely got me sort of thinking, asking myself some sort of existential type questions about how I am and how I think, and really quite interesting, I think. So
me too. Thank you very much, Kat. That was a pretty good question. We've got another question for next episode, I think, from Aid.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That is.
That's a big question.
That's a big question.
And
it says, "Hello, Pat and Mike." In brackets, wasn't there a double act in P.G. Wodehouse's books called that? I've got no idea. P.G. Well, my dad used to read P.G. Wodehouse. And there's Jeeves and Wooster, isn't there, on British TV? No one probably understands what we're talking about right now, so we'll move on. Anyway, I enjoyed the question and answer session in your last podcast. That was podcast number 9. So here's another question. Perhaps you feel that you no longer... Or was it podcast number 10? I can't remember. They're all kind of just...
10.
Okay.
You've got to blur into one.
Yeah, blur into one. Sorry, question number 10. Anyway, perhaps you... so here's another question. Perhaps you feel that you no longer have... Sorry, I'll start again. Perhaps you feel that you no longer have a national identity, but do you think you have a cultural identity? Warmest and fondest, Aid. And that's...
Aid is my mum.
And that's
for anyone who's new to the podcast. I'm going to interview her at some point, Mike, I think.
Okay, go for it. But that's a big question. And if anyone has got any thoughts on that, like the difference perhaps between the cultural and the national identity, can you? I mean, I've got some, I've got some things I'm going to say on it. I'm sure Pat has as well.
Yeah,
but if there's anything,
I've been thinking about that. Yeah.
If there's any kind of anyone listening who kind of feels maybe the same, that perhaps they don't feel sort of nationally aligned with their peers, but perhaps culturally, and what that difference is, that would be quite interesting to hear from you. But that is what we'll be talking about next week. So
send us your emails to foreignpodcast@gmail.com.
Follow us on
Instagram at Forrin Podcast.
Yep.
Where else can you find us? Is that that's
you're at Lord Pat? We've already established
at Lord Pat.
That's it.
What are you on Instagram?
And I am at Mike J Bowden. I don't hide behind any kind of sort of false. I don't worship any false idols here. No,
it's not false, Mike.
Lord Pat. Yeah. But anyway, at Mike J Bowden is my Instagram. But if you want to write or say hi or anything along those lines, but I think that just about wraps it up.
I think we're there, Mike. That was episode 11. Can't wait for episode 12.
No, coming in a couple of weeks' time. All right.
It's going to be a monster.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.